Greetings and welcome to World of Monsters. Today we're working on Toramat of Primal the Awakening. This is a desert-dwelling, giant head-bashing, tail-clubbing desert monster. The way I started with this guy is with this sandy khaki airbrush spray from the front and an orange spray coming from the back to sort of give a warm glow of the desert around, maybe a sunset feel. And then I'm going to proceed to start with the reds that come out from the crevices of its head. And by the way, it has recently come to my attention as I got a new patron that is actually interested in this sort of content. And that's not something I've been optimizing my Patreon in the direction of, as I was doing more monster lore stuff, and now I'm sort of doing half, if not more, of this more hobby-oriented monstrous stuff. So if you do find an interest for this sort of content, I'm thinking up some ideas of what I can present on the Patreon and where I can go more in depth on sharing my knowledge of miniature painting. Professionally, I am a digital sculptor, but as far as miniature painting, that's something I got into back as a kid in the 90s and deeper back into at around 2018 or so. So that's a little about that. And back to Toramat here, I started with some, shall we say, edge highlighting of a different bright color, a gray to sort of break out his stone appearance, and then I followed that up with a brighter highlight in the same direction, not being too creative with the color mixes thus far, and I don't think overall on this model. After I had covered the rest of him with the highlights, focusing on the front being the brightest, and toning it down going toward the back, I think I mixed up, or I found an old wash. I probably mixed one up. I haven't actually been purchasing many washes as I haven't been using washes much, and if I need them or a glaze, I simply make it on hand. And so I'm using a sort of wash here to fill in some crevices between the textures, to break them out and to add some interest to the model so it's not just a grayish, khaki-ish, sandy looking beast, but to give him some areas of more interest and a little bit of dynamic color flow. After that, I moved on to the stones below, color-wise taking them away from what we have going on so far, making them purple in tone. I added the highlights on the fronts as well, everything focused on the front, after which I returned to the head for some final brightest of highlights. Considering I didn't change the hues too much on this guy, the tricky thing and what may be a little bit more dull within this approach is that I'm just going brighter and brighter, sort of with the same hue, which does become a challenge because nothing of the color sticks out except being brighter, and at this point it's pretty much just white. And that's not usually a color I want to actually end with as far as a highlight. But being as it is with its tones, and wanting to really pull the brightness out, that's where I ended up going on the head. After that, I returned to the rocks, applying the final highlights on those, and then starting on that cracked up ground, where I'm having a little bit of freehand fun, applying the khaki color, on top of which I apply a brighter highlight color in the same vein, the same sort of level of warmth, maybe a little bit cooler, but also freehanding it so it can really stand out and give the ground that other dimension and contrast. And then the final area of work on this guy goes back to his back where we have the orange Mars tones, and I highlight those with another layer of orange. And then again, not getting too creative with the colors, going with just a much brighter tone in the same vein, keeping it nice and simple, everything flowing smooth and working together and being more or less predictable. And as with all my models, I finished the basing edges with black, followed by a couple layers of gloss varnish. So you can handle that base all you want, and so it just stands out with the glossiness to the flatness of the rest. And I gotta say that this guy looks extra satisfying being totally matte, as it just all fits that environment really well. So all in all, I got this guide done in a rather timely manner. If you're not particularly particular about certain intricacies of the model and the textures it has all over its hide, you could just simply go dark, lighter gray, or khaki or whatever, and dry brush, going further away and away from the recesses, going brighter and brighter. At this point, dry brushing is something I do not do. If the closest thing I do would be edge highlighting, which at that point they cross over and become one thing. But the reason is that dry brushing will still create this sort of brushed, messy, dry sort of look. Of course, you can make it look better, but I definitely like to be more intentional. Even if the final product looks very similar to what it would have looked dry brushed, I still feel more satisfied with the process, even though it will take longer. But I think to the, should I say, experienced eye, these little subtle details and such will be noticeable, and it's just a good habit to build. Anyway, hope you enjoyed how Toramat here turned out, and this narration of me going back and talking over the process. I've been thinking about going away from it, but now I'm sort of motivated to go back and talking more about the process and making extra content for those of you that may seek it, where I can expand on the depths of my approach and maybe give you some feedback as well if you'd like it. Thanks for watching. If you own Primal the Awakening, you might want to check out this other video of another monster from the game that I painted, or one of these fun one-on-one monster battle videos that I've been getting into lately.